You've got maybe 20 minutes before this whole place falls apart, I said. Zachary Morrison blinked at me like I just told him his Tesla ran on fairy dust and wishful thinking. Excuse me? I slid my security badge across the conference table. It landed right between his overpriced kombucha and the severance paperwork they'd drawn up. 20 minutes, maybe less, before you realize what you just lost. Zach, I'm not making threats, just stating facts based on 22 years of keeping this place running. I stood up, smoothed down my shirt. Good luck finding someone who actually knows how the production line works. Then I walked out of that conference room for the last time. My name is Harold Gibson. People call me Hal. I'm 48 years old and I just got fired by a 29-year-old who married the CEO's daughter at some yoga retreat in Costa Rica and thinks manufacturing excellence means adding more screens to everything. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. You can tell a company's real priorities by who gets the executive parking spots and who gets stuck near the loading dock. At Midwest Auto Components, the loading dock smelled like hydraulic fluid and 20 years of honest work. The executive parking smelled like expensive cologne and unearned confidence. I'd been keeping the production automation systems alive since 2001. Senior Industrial Systems Engineer was my official title, but what I actually did was more like being a heart surgeon for assembly lines that never got to rest. The trouble started when Zach wheeled his standing desk setup into the executive wing. Kid married the CEO's daughter after one weekend doing hot yoga and drinking green juice. 4 months later, he's Chief Technology Officer. 4 months. I'd spent longer than that debugging the torque calibration system when it went haywire in 2019. Zach was 29, wore designer jeans to a manufacturing plant, and had AirPods permanently welded to his ears. Pretty sure he slept with them in. He had an MBA from some fancy place and exactly zero understanding of how you actually make car parts without killing anyone. But he had opinions, lots of them. His first all-hands meeting, he stood up there with his green smoothie and started throwing around buzzwords like digital transformation and Industry 4.0 and how we needed to move fast and break things. I sat in the back row, arms crossed, thinking about the 60-hour week I'd pulled in 2020 when the main conveyor system almost went down during our biggest order of the year. I'd kept things from breaking. He wanted to break them on purpose and call it progress. We're entering an exciting new phase. Zach announced, clicking through slides that looked like he'd copy-pasted them from some tech blog. Legacy processes are holding us back. We need fresh approaches, modern thinking, and honestly, fewer people stuck in outdated methodologies. People shifted in their seats. I didn't move. I'd heard versions of this speech before from consultants and new managers who lasted about 18 months before reality caught up with them. He looked right at me during that last part, direct eye contact when he said outdated methodologies. I held his gaze and smiled the kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. What Zach couldn't know because he'd never bothered to ask, was that I'd built the monitoring systems keeping our entire production line from turning expensive metal into expensive scrap. Every night at midnight, my custom software ran diagnostics on 47 different measurement points. Torque specifications, temperature variations, vibration analysis, quality control checkpoints. All stuff I'd programmed myself over the years after watching million-dollar mistakes happen when people tried to cut corners. Those programs were mine, legally mine. My employment contract was crystal clear about intellectual property. Anything I created on my own time using my own methods belonged to me. The company could use them while I was employed and providing updates. No employment, no updates, no license to use my code. I'd shown that contract to our company lawyer back in 2001. He'd read it carefully, looked up at me and said, "Keep good documentation, Hal." I kept excellent documentation. Zach kept talking about his vision: cloud-based manufacturing, AI-driven quality control, real-time optimization, synergistic efficiency gains. I stopped listening and started thinking about my mortgage payment due next week, about Jessica's part-time nursing job and how we were finally getting ahead after 22 years of steady work, about Brandon, our 24-year-old son, just starting his engineering career and looking up to his old man who knew how things really worked, about the 25 years Jessica and I had built together, one paycheck at a time. The whole family had this thing figured out. Jessica picked up extra shifts at the hospital when we needed them. Brandon was living at home while he saved money from his entry-level position at a local fabrication shop. We weren't rich, but we were stable. Middle-class stable, the kind where you can sleep at night, knowing the bills are covered, and maybe take a vacation every couple years. But that stability depended on me staying employed until I could collect my pension at 55, 7 more years. That's all I needed. 7 years to bridge the gap between working life and retirement, between raising a family and watching grandkids grow up. 2 weeks after that meeting, I got the calendar invite. Subject line, performance discussion, H. Gibson. No agenda, no context, just a 4:30 p.m. slot on a Thursday. I'd seen this movie before. The late afternoon meetings, the carefully neutral HR person, the manila folder with separation terms. They never did these things in the morning when people were fresh and might put up a fight. I showed up at 40:28 p.m., professional to the end. Zach was there, sitting casual on the edge of the table with some consultant named Adrian, who wore $400 sneakers and called himself a process optimization specialist. Linda from HR sat in the corner, looking like she'd rather be cleaning septic tanks with a toothbrush. Harold, Zach started, and I could tell he'd practiced this speech. You've been a valuable part of Midwest's journey. Really valuable, but we're restructuring to align with where manufacturing is heading. More agile, more data-driven, more forward-thinking. I didn't blink, just waited for the translation, which came right on schedule. We're reimagining certain legacy positions, he continued. Translation: Old guy, you cost too much, and you make me look stupid when I suggest things that won't work. We think this is an excellent opportunity for you to explore new challenges that better match your experience level. Adrian nodded like Zach had just solved world hunger. Linda slid the severance package across the table. 3 months' salary, health insurance continuation for 18 months, and career transition support services. I picked up the papers, scanned the legal language. Used to review vendor agreements before Zach decided that was bureaucratic waste. Any questions about the package? Zach asked. He was smiling, actually smiling like he'd done me a favor buying me a lottery ticket. That's when I said it. You've got maybe 20 minutes. I didn't go home. Walked 3 blocks down to Murphy's Place. This working man's bar, where Eddie Walsh knew to pour Jim Beam without asking. Found my usual corner booth where I could still see the Midwest building through the window. 3rd floor all lit up like nothing had changed. Eddie brought over the bourbon. Ex-foreman from the old Chrysler plant before it closed in 2008. He was maybe 55, gray beard, steady hands from 30 years of not panicking when production schedules went sideways. He set the glass down, looked at my face, looked at my phone sitting silent on the table. Back at my face. They finally do it? He asked. Yep. How long you give them? 20 minutes, maybe less. He pulled out the chair across from me, sat down with his own coffee. You remember when I told you about the Chrysler shutdown? I did, but I let him tell it again. Sometimes you need to hear you're not the only one. 2008, Eddie said. 28 years building transmissions, knew every bolt and gasket in that place. New management comes in from headquarters, all spreadsheets and efficiency experts. Starts talking about redundant positions and optimizing headcount. He took a sip of coffee, let me go on a Tuesday. By Friday, their main line was down. Turns out I was the only one who knew the quirks of the hydraulic system. They called you back? Oh yeah. Offered me contractor rates to fix it. I told them my consulting fee was triple my old hourly minimum 1-month contract payment up front. He smiled, they paid it, took me 2 days to fix what they broke. Then I opened this place. My phone started buzzing, once, twice, then constantly. Eddie glanced at it. That them? Yep, you gonna answer? Nope. He nodded, stood up, went back to wiping down the bar, left me with my thoughts and the bourbon. Here's what nobody tells you about being the guy who holds everything together. You become invisible, not because you're bad at your job, but because you're too good at it. Things just work. Production lines hum along, and people forget someone's making that happen. They forget until you stop. My monitoring systems weren't rocket science, just solid automation built on 22 years of watching things fail. Every night at midnight, they'd check calibration drift on the torque wrenches, verify temperature consistency in the heat treatment bays, analyze vibration patterns that could indicate bearing wear. Every morning at 6 a.m., they'd validate quality control measurements, test backup systems, flag any anomalies before the day shift arrived. Boring work. Critical work. The kind nobody notices until it doesn't happen. I'd tried explaining this to Zach about 6 weeks back, showed him the dashboard, walked him through the error logs, demonstrated how one small calibration drift could cascade into thousands of defective parts. He'd listened for maybe 90 seconds before cutting me off. Right, but modern systems have built-in redundancy. he'd said, scrolling through his phone. This kind of manual monitoring is anti-agile. We need to trust the automation. The automation fails, I'd told him. That's why we monitor it. That's old thinking, Harold. We're moving towards smart manufacturing, self-correcting systems. I'd pulled up the logs from last year when our smart system miscalibrated and we almost shipped 2,000 defective brake components. Showed him how my backup monitoring caught it before they left the plant. He'd scrolled through maybe 3 lines. Exactly, he'd said. Single points of failure. That's what we need to eliminate. I was the single point of failure he wanted to eliminate. My phone lit up again. Linda from HR, then Gary from quality control, then a number I didn't recognize. Probably someone from corporate. I let them all ring. Started getting texts too. Text from Gary popped up. Hal, line 3 torque readings are all over the place. You know what's going on? I typed back. Check the documentation. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, what documentation? I put the phone back down. See, there was documentation. 340 pages of it. Process flows, calibration procedures, troubleshooting guides, vendor contact information, emergency protocols. I'd written it myself over the years, updated it quarterly, kept it current, stored it in the shared drive under a folder clearly labeled Critical Systems H. Gibson. Zach had that folder deleted 3 weeks ago during a storage optimization audit. Said it was legacy bloat taking up server space. I'd objected in writing, sent him an email explaining why we needed those procedures documented. He'd replied with data should live in the systems, not in static documents. We're moving toward dynamic knowledge management. I'd kept my own copy, of course, on my personal laptop, which was currently locked in my truck outside. The TV over the bar flickered to the financial news channel. A ticker scrolled across the bottom. Midwest Auto Components shares down 15% in after hours, trading following reports of production disruptions. Eddie glanced at the screen, then at me, raised an eyebrow. Didn't say anything. My phone started ringing continuously now. Same panic. Different voices cycling through. Text from Linda, Harold. Please call when you can. We need to discuss transition procedures. Text from Zach. Hey, hope you're doing well. Quick question about the torque monitoring protocols. Then another from Zach. This is pretty urgent. Could really use your input here. Then Harold. I know we didn't handle this perfectly, but we need your help fixing some issues. I finished my bourbon, held up the empty glass. Eddie brought the bottle over, poured 2 fingers. Stock's down 15%, he said quietly. Just getting started, I replied. You mess with anything before you left? Didn't touch a thing. Just stopped maintaining it. There a difference? I looked at him. Big difference. Sabotage is breaking something that works. This is just letting broken things stay broken. He thought about that, nodded slowly, went back to the bar. Left me with the growing pile of voicemails and increasingly frantic texts. By 11 p.m., my phone had 89 unread messages. I'd stopped counting after 50. Drove home around midnight, left the phone in the truck, and slept better than I had in months. No midnight anxiety about whether the systems were running clean. No 6 a.m. checks to make sure quality control was catching defects. Just solid, uninterrupted sleep. Woke up at 7 a.m. to find my phone had exploded overnight. 15 6 messages, 42 missed calls, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize, made coffee, strong black, using the French press Brandon got me for Christmas. Sat at the kitchen table and finally started reading. The first emails had timestamps that told the whole story. 12 to 47 a.m., line 3 torque calibration drift detected. 1:23 a.m., quality control measurements outside tolerance. 2:15 a.m., temperature variance in heat treatment bay 2. 3:08 a.m., vibration analysis showing bearing wear indicators. 4:45 a.m., multiple systems flagging potential failures. By 6 a.m., when the day shift arrived, they walked into a manufacturing nightmare. Torque wrenches that couldn't hold calibration, heat treatment systems running too hot, conveyor bearings grinding toward failure, quality control measurements that made no sense because nobody understood the baseline parameters. Text from Gary at 7:30 a.m. Hal, everything's going crazy. Line 3 is down, quality's rejecting everything from line 1, and nobody knows how to fix the heat treatment controllers. Then one from someone named Michelle in engineering. Mr. Gibson, I'm covering your systems temporarily. Is there any documentation I can reference? The shared drive folder is empty. I deleted them all without responding. The news picked it up by 10 a.m. Midwest Auto Components halts production as technical issues affect multiple assembly lines. Stock falls 28% in morning trading. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered. Mr. Gibson, professional woman's voice. This is Margaret Reynolds from Stratum Industries. I hope this isn't a bad time. I've got time. We've been following your career for several years. We're impressed with your work at Midwest. She paused. We'd like to make you an offer. I'm listening. Consulting position, 6-month minimum contract, renewable, $105,000 annually, full benefits, equity participation, and most importantly, you'd be working with people who understand manufacturing. What's the catch? No catch. We need someone who builds systems right instead of breaking them and calling it innovation. We're tired of cleaning up after MBAs who think automation means magic. I almost laughed. When do you need an answer? Take the weekend. Think it over. But Harold, we've watched you keep that place running for over 20 years. We know what you're worth, even if they didn't. Jessica came home from her shift around 2 p.m., found me sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, reading through the Stratum offer. She still had her scrubs on, looked tired after pulling a double at the hospital. How'd it go today? She asked, then saw my face. What happened? They let me go yesterday afternoon. She sat down across from me, didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, after 22 years, new management. Wants younger, cheaper, more agile. I used air quotes around agile, which made her smile a little. That's age discrimination, Hal. We could sue them. Maybe. Right now, I'm just letting things play out. What does that mean? It means they're having some technical problems without me there. And I got a job offer this morning. Better money, better company. Really? That fast? Turns out experience is worth something to people who know what they're looking for. Brandon came through the door about an hour later, still wearing his work clothes from the fabrication shop. Grease under his fingernails, safety glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked like a younger version of me, if I'm being honest. Same build, same way of moving like he's thinking through a mechanical problem. Dad, what's with all the messages on the house phone? Some guy named Zach called 3 times. I filled him in on the whole situation. Brandon listened without interrupting, asked a few technical questions about the monitoring systems, nodded when I explained about the intellectual property contract. So they fired you, and now they want you to fix their mess for free. That's about the size of it. He thought about that for a minute. Dad, remember what you taught me about tools? You don't lend out your good tools because people don't take care of what they didn't earn. I remembered. One of the first lessons I'd taught him when he started working on cars in high school. This is the same thing, right? You built those systems, they're your tools. Why should you lend them out to people who don't respect what they didn't earn? Smart kid. Always had been. Sometimes it takes your own child to remind you of the lessons you taught them. 3 days went by. The messages kept coming, getting more desperate. Zach tried calling from different numbers, left voicemails that went from casual to panicked. Hey man, no hard feelings, right? We just need some quick guidance here. Harold, please, the board is asking questions I can't answer. Harold, I made a mistake. Can we talk? I deleted every single one. 2 weeks later, the lawsuit started. First was a mid-sized truck manufacturer whose production schedule got wrecked when Midwest couldn't deliver brake components on time. Their assembly line shut down for 3 days waiting for parts that met spec. They filed for $3.8 million in damages, then 2 more clients. Then a class action from smaller parts suppliers who'd been left hanging when Midwest's quality control system collapsed. By week 3, the state opened an investigation into whether Midwest had violated industrial safety regulations by operating equipment outside calibration parameters. When torque wrenches can't hold calibration, when heat treatment runs outside spec, when quality control measurements become meaningless, you're not just talking about bad parts. You're talking about brake components that might fail in real cars with real families inside. That's when the subpoena arrived. Certified mail, thick envelope, law firm letterhead I recognized. They weren't suing me. They wanted me to testify. Mr. Gibson, you are hereby requested to provide expert testimony in the matter of Industrial Partners LLC versus Midwest Auto Components. Your technical expertise and documentation of prior safety warnings are material to this case. I read it twice. They wanted everything. Email warnings, meeting notes, calibration records. Every time I'd flagged a risk and been overruled. Every time Zach had called my concerns legacy thinking. I had all of it. Time-stamped, archived, backed up in 3 locations. The lawyer called that afternoon. Mr. Gibson, you're not in any legal trouble. We need you to explain what happened and why in plain language. They fired the guy who kept their systems working, then acted surprised when everything broke down. Can you say that in a deposition? I can say it under oath. Perfect. We'll schedule for next month. In the meantime, if Midwest contacts you, forward everything to us. They've been contacting me for 2 weeks. I haven't responded once. He laughed. Keep doing exactly that. I accepted Stratum's offer the next day. Real office, windows with actual sunlight, people who understood that manufacturing is both art and science. George Carter, their CTO, was maybe 58 with gray hair and 35 years of engineering experience. He sat down with me personally on my first day. Show me what you're thinking for our quality control upgrade. I pulled out the notes I'd made over the weekend. Multi-layer monitoring, automated calibration verification, predictive maintenance scheduling. The stuff that actually works when you're not trying to be trendy. George listened, asked intelligent questions, took actual notes. This is exactly what we need, Harold. When can you start implementation? Give me 4 weeks to map the dependencies properly. Take 6 if you need it. I'd rather have it right than fast. It felt like speaking a foreign language I'd almost forgotten. Management that wanted things done right instead of fast. Engineers who asked real questions instead of parroting buzzwords. A budget for proper testing instead of just hoping everything would work. 6 months later, I sat in a deposition room that looked exactly like every legal drama you've ever seen. Long conference table, court reporter in the corner, lawyers in suits that cost more than my first car. The lead attorney was a sharp woman named Sarah Mitchell, maybe 45, with the kind of questions that cut straight to the point. Mr. Gibson, are these emails from you to Zachary Morrison and other Midwest management? I looked at them, my own words highlighted in yellow. Yes. Can you read the subject line of the first one? Critical. Heat treatment. Calibration drift. Immediate action required. And the date? March 22nd, 2024. What was Mr. Morrison's response? I flipped to the reply. Thanks for the flag. We're implementing smart sensors soon, so manual monitoring won't be necessary. Did they implement smart sensors? No, they deleted the monitoring systems instead. What happened as a result? Heat treatment ran outside parameters for 6 weeks. Compromised the metallurgy on about 15,000 brake components before quality control caught it. Sarah pulled out another document. This is an internal message from Mr. Morrison. Can you read what he wrote? Harold's stuck in old school thinking. Manual monitoring is anti-agile. We need to move beyond his comfort zone. Mr. Gibson, in your 22 years at Midwest, how many production failures did you prevent? I thought about it. Stopped counting around 80. Could be 120, could be more. Did you receive recognition for this work? Got emails saying good catch? Maybe a gift card at Christmas. Bonuses? Promotions? No. Mr. Morrison has stated that you sabotaged the systems. How do you respond? I looked directly at the camera recording this. I didn't touch anything. I revoked access to software I owned when my employment ended. That's not sabotage, that's property law. One final question. Would you have done anything differently? I thought about that. Really thought about it. I would have left 2 years earlier when they started treating experience like a liability. The case settled out of court for $7.8 million. The number made headlines in the trade publications. Zachary quietly left Midwest 3 months later. His LinkedIn now describes him as an entrepreneurial consultant, which is fancy talk for unemployed. I never reached out, never gloated, never even looked at their stock price. I was too busy building something that actually worked. At Stratum, I designed monitoring systems that became the industry standard. Other companies started hiring us specifically because they'd heard about the guy who'd built bulletproof quality control. Brandon finished his engineering degree and came to work for Stratum. Smart kid, asks the right questions, listens when you explain why things work the way they do. Jessica cut back to part-time at the hospital because we didn't need her overtime anymore. For the first time in 25 years, we weren't living paycheck to paycheck. That's the thing about real revenge. The quiet kind, the professional kind, is when you walk away and prove your worth somewhere else. When you show that what they threw away was valuable, just not to them. When you build something better with people who understand what you bring to the table. 22 years I gave that company. They threw it away in 20 minutes. I got it back in 6 months and came out ahead. Some people call that luck. I call it the market correcting itself. Experience has value even when young hotshots can't see it. These days, when I drive past the old Midwest building, I don't feel anger or satisfaction. I feel nothing at all. That's not my story anymore. My story is the team I'm building at Stratum, the systems that work the first time, the young engineers who actually want to learn how things really work. That's not revenge. That's just moving on to better things. They thought they were buying innovation. But what they really needed was someone who understood that the best technology is the kind that works when nobody's watching. Sometimes the most advanced system is just experience wrapped in code that never breaks down.